Good morning! We're very excited to announce that in 2 weeks there's a special scary event that'll be taking place at Apple Park. There will be no need for Apple event. Excuse me? We have some very exciting products we need to share with the world. Yes, but in Soviet Russia, the products share you. I don't think I understand. We already know what you have in store. We already have your precious M4 MacBook Pros in stock. Already? How would that be possible? We haven't even sent out invites yet. We have everything we need to run Geekbench test on M4 Mac. And very soon, we will unbox iPhone 17 as well. How do you even have that? We haven't even made the iPhone 17 yet. We fix it all. It has 120 hertz. It has everything people want. No more of these capitalist pigs charging extra for a promotion display. Right, I'm gonna leave this Tailosive tech video before the Russian jokes go too far. Oh, but this will not be a good morning for you, Tim. Now look, I know we've talked a lot about different leaks over the years for Apple, but this one is quite bizarre and kind of outside the usual realm, at least for Apple. So the product itself that got leaked is the M4 MacBook Pro. There's now been multiple Russian YouTube channels. I don't know how the heck they're able to get MacBooks. Thought Apple stopped selling a bunch of stuff in Russia anyway, but yeah, the product itself is not all that interesting. Like, yeah, it's a MacBook Pro. It's the same design as before. It just has 3 USB-C ports now on the base model instead of requiring you to spend more money to get that third USB-C port. And yes, the M4 chip is faster and everything, but it's crazy that someone has actually already unboxed and tested these things before the invites for the event have actually gone out. That's pretty much never happened in Apple's history, which is why a lot of news sites are rightfully bringing up this is kind of unprecedented. This is very outside the norm for Apple. It's kind of typical if it was Google. No one would be shocked at all if, like, way before the event even took place for the Pixel 9, there were channels unboxing it, because that's happened many times before. It kind of helps build hype. I question, though, if Apple would be the type of company to kind of intentionally let things leak just to try to build hype. I mean, if this is a 4D underwater chess move by Greg Jaws, it's a pretty freaking interesting one, because Apple's never really had this kind of breach happen before, and my best guess as to how it's happened is that Apple maybe has started diversifying who they use to handle all of their early review unit, like, embargo devices. You know how there's nice list YouTubers that get Apple products early from Apple, obviously not me, and maybe Apple was relying on a third party to kind of hold on to these M4 MacBook Pros, because obviously we've known for a while that the M4 chip was coming to the Mac. That's not a big secret. So maybe Apple was letting it slip a little bit this year and just go, you know what, instead of us having to handle all of the shipping and figuring out which YouTubers get which MacBook, let's just let a third party do it. And then maybe they used one of those third party marketing companies that Google has been known to use in the past, because those are the marketing companies that can get a little sketchy and start selling off the units and be like, oops, we lost some of them in shipping. How did that happen? Who knows what these YouTubers actually paid to get access to these things, but they do seem pretty freaking real. I mean, the packaging is similar, but on the back is where the real magic happens, because it's the exact same packaging that we saw leak before that revealed quite a bit about the M4 MacBook Pros. But then even when they opened the MacBook Pro, you can go into system information and see that it says November 2024, which is the rumored ship date for these things. It's just funny that it can be in the month of October, and the Mac is like, yes, I was manufactured next month. And it says M4 chip in system info and everything. It'd be a very, very intricate fake if these are faked, but now that they're doing the Geekbench test results as well, I'm fairly confident. I'm like 99% convinced that these are real, unreleased M4 MacBook Pros that somehow these YouTubers were able to get a hold of, likely through some marketing agency. I'd be very, very shocked if somehow they found like Apple employees internally that were willing to sell off these machines, because I'm sure that for the internal use MacBooks, Apple could probably track them down and figure out which ones were assigned to which employee. So it makes far more sense in my head that they're relying on some kind of third-party marketing agency that they hadn't really fully vetted yet, and that marketing agency just had a few employees that wanted to make a quick buck and decided to sell them online. This would be a real big disappointment if it happened to some kind of unrevealed brand new design design from Apple, like, I don't know, Apple Vision Pro 2, if that somehow got into the wrong hands. That would be kind of devastating for Apple, that like some random YouTuber got to unveil that design to the world instead of their marketing team. But I think Apple's probably willing to let this one slide because it's not a new design. It's really just a chip upgrade. It's not a massive improvement, at least in regards to the design. When it comes to how fast the M4 chip actually performs, yeah, similar to previous years. It's not like the massive jump that we saw between Intel to ARM. Like, that was probably a jump we'll never see again in the Mac lineup. But it is a bigger than usual jump because based on these Geekbench tests, which again, in my opinion, really shouldn't be looked at as real-world examples of how much faster the chip is. In real-world examples like video export tests or code compiling or audio mixing, the difference is probably much, much smaller. That's just my prediction. But at least in the Geekbench tests, the CPU appears to be around 30% faster than the M3 chip, which is quite a lot. In years prior, we usually see performance jumps, you know, when we're going from M1 to M2 and M2 to M3. Most of the time, the performance jump is between like 15 to 20% faster. So this time, seeing the CPU jump be closer to like 30% faster, that's kind of like, oh, this is a bigger jump than usual, but still, 30% faster isn't necessarily a game changer for a lot of people's use case. I don't think you need to buy a new MacBook if you already have an M1 or M2 or M3 variant. It'll still probably work just fine. But that's probably the biggest jump. In GPU test results, it looks like a 20% gain, which again is great and welcome, but really just to make the Mac line for new customers who are walking into an Apple store, make sure that they get the latest generation tech and that it's substantially faster than their last MacBook. But again, I don't think that means you should be upgrading if you already have an M1 variant of some kind. It does look noticeably better, I think, in the MacBook Pro because it has an active cooling system compared to the M4 test results we saw on the iPad Pro, which is like the thinnest Apple product ever. Doesn't have an active cooling system, and again, most of those M4 iPad Pros that people are buying are the binned options with a 9-core CPU, whereas the MacBook Pro, at least with the M4 chip, is in these leaked tests rocking a 10-core CPU. So there's still a chance that Apple could surprise us at the October event and announce there's a price hike, even though the base model now has 16 gigs of RAM and a 10-core CPU. Now it could be $1,800 instead of $1,600. But I guess what kind of gets me excited is the idea that the M4 chip, the base model, is now catching up to the performance of like the M3 Pro chip. So instead of having to spec extra to get that third USB-C port and spend all that extra money to get more RAM and the more Pro variant chip, you could get that same level of performance in the base model in that same number of Thunderbolt ports, which might mean that the Mac I'm most excited about and interested in, the M4 Mac Mini, even though that's like a $600 Mac, might end up outperforming my iMac Pro, which I know is old, but that was just kind of an easy benchmark for me because I used that for so many years. And when the M1 MacBook Air came out, the performance was still, at least at export tests, not quite as fast as my iMac Pro. But if I knew now that I could replace my iMac Pro as like a secondary Mac and get faster export times or faster overall speed with a machine that's $600 relative to a Mac that used to be, you know, $5,000, that's pretty dang impressive. So not a huge shock. Newer chip is faster. Who would have thought? But the more shocking thing is how these specs were leaked and how early they were leaked. Because yes, the event hasn't even been announced yet. Although Mark Gurman is saying that there's a decent chance the event will take place on October 28th and the Macs will actually be available in store on November 1st. That would align with the manufacturing date that we've seen from these leaked videos. But do you guys think someone at Apple is getting royally fired, or at least the marketing team that they went with? Are they ever going to do this again? Or do you have that tinfoil double conspiracy theory in your mind like I do that's making you think this is kind of a boring Apple product anyway, but letting it intentionally leak might actually attract a bit more attention and build more hype, sort of to what Google and Samsung do with the accidental leaking all the time. Maybe Apple's trying to piggyback on that accidental leaking as well. Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.